What's going on, citizens of the Dark Knight Nation, and welcome back to the channel. Today I have a little clip for you on an older conversation I had with Comic Boom, particularly surrounding the rising cynicism in comic book fans. And this segment of the conversation more deals with the ideas of transitioning from a more casual reader to a critical reader, and sort of why it might be in the industry's best interest to try to cater to both types of reader. And if you end up enjoying this, please leave a like, share the content to help circulate it. Us small YouTubers live and die off of stuff like that, so I would super appreciate it. And of course, if you end up enjoying it, we do have the full hour-and-a-half long conversation linked in the description below, so go check that out if you end up enjoying it. And with all that out of the way, let's get into it.
Cynicism is something that happens. It's not necessarily applicable to age. I was quite upset. I mean, I stopped collecting Swamp Thing because I hated it at issue 20, and then Alan Moore came up on issue 21. That's my greatest faux pas in my comic collecting life. Just when I stopped collecting Swamp Thing because I was so upset with it, that's when Alan Moore made it a better comic. But in any event, cynicism, I think there's healthy cynicism, and then there's being actually resentful of the comic book publishing, and I think that's the difference in terms of what's happening right now. I think a little bit of cynicism, I think there's healthy cynicism in an industry that drives it forward, and it challenges, and that editors will say, hey guys, look, we're reading the readership here. They're a little upset. The reviews aren't where we want them. We're not getting the hype and the talk that we want about. We need to change. We need to rock the boat a little bit more. And of course, I think that a little bit of healthy cynicism that drives creators forward in trying new things is good. Where I'm a little bit concerned now is where I think we've crossed. I think in certain areas of comic book culture right now, we've crossed a Rubicon into sort of some ugliness and personal attacks on creators, and it's not just become about the stories, it's become about personal things like politics, and that's where it gets very, very unfortunate, where people, because of their politics, we're criticizing their creativity, and we're not even going to buy their comic because of something that has nothing to do with their skills as a writer. And that, to me, is a Rubicon that's been crossed that I find deeply disturbing. It's one thing for me to be ranting and raving. People can ignore me. I'm a cynical bastard. At times, that's all right. But I'd like to think I've never, openly attacked anyone personally. Although, one has to wonder that. I will say this. When I was younger, it never even occurred to me that if I didn't like a story, it's so weird, but I remember when I was like in my teenage life, I never thought of criticizing the writer. I just found a way to make the story work in my head. I would never do the equivalent of being angry at a writer when I was younger, in my 15, 16. I would just, if I didn't like the story, I wouldn't buy it. But now, as I'm older, I find myself criticizing the writing and the writer, and being more analytical, being more critical. And that's something that maybe has just come with age. And I do find, though, if I'm brutally honest, that I missed that innocence I had. I had more, I gave the comic book more of a life of its own when I was younger. I gave the comic book universe the benefit of the doubt. And I found a way to make the story work in my head. And I enjoyed it in certain ways more sometimes because I had that innocence. Whereas now, because I'm more cynical, I'll opt to criticize the writer and the lack of creativity, as opposed to getting involved in the story itself. Like, I mean, let's face it, you might not like death metal, but to use an example, there's a difference. We can easily rip apart death metal in certain areas if you don't like the structure and how it's paced, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also the other side where you can get lost in the crazy, zany fun of it. Notwithstanding that, it is a mindset. It is a mindset. And I think the older you get, I mean, everything is a choice. And your mindset as you choose and what you're doing as you read a comic, I really think it matters.
But it's like, the one thing I'll give you, though, is that I think that okay, let me start this over. Should comic books continue to be this art form, and I'm not saying it is completely, but should the status quo be a complacent style of storytelling that is only appealing to people that shut off the logical side of their brain? And that's where I'd say 100% no. I look at comic books as a storytelling medium that is on par with cinema, prose, you name it. And I actually really value the fact that as I get older, I appreciate higher quality art because, well, first of all, one, as I think, and I'm not saying this is for everybody, but as I've been able to sort of intellectualize what's going on in a comic book, I've come to appreciate the good stuff even more, and it applies to most other art forms. Like I rewatched Spirited Away, the Studio Ghibli Miyazaki film, like a week or two ago for the first time in years. And it's not a perfect movie, but I very much appreciate everything in that film that compensates for its sort of shortcomings. And those things compensate so well that although this is nowhere near a perfect film, it's still a top 10 film in my book, of all time. And so in a way, I think that sort of growing in your understanding and ability to understand what's going on in whatever type of art or narrative storytelling you're absorbing, I think it enhances the experience. And I think that, I don't think that there's a part of me that wishes I could turn that critical brain off. There's actually a part of me, and it might be self-serving, that wishes that the creators turned it on a little bit more, that they made the stories that could appeal to both the people that want to shut their brains off and to the people who really just want to think about what they're reading or what they're experiencing. Because I think that there's a way to do both. I think there's a reason why, when you ask most people what their top 10s are when it comes to comic book stories, you might hear it in a different order, but most of the time you're going to hear a lot of the same names. You're going to hear The Dark Knight Returns, you're going to hear The Watchmen, you're going to hear The Sandman, you might hear Preacher. You want to know why? Because they find this excellent way to appeal to somebody who wants a story to think about and to chew on, and to those people who just want to shut their brain off and experience something and to kind of let themselves float away into an atmosphere. And I think that a strong comic book creative team should be able to do both of those things. But with that being said, Ed Brewer says that he is a cynic. 90% of these books aren't worth the money to me anymore. I can't comment on the worth the money to me anymore thing because I've been reading comics for less than a decade, and for pretty much as long as I've been reading them, the average issue has been between $3 and $4. But I can say that, in the marketplace of ideas and within entertainment specifically, comic books have never been, and especially now, are not competitive. When I can buy a Netflix subscription with hundreds, if not millions of hours, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of hours of entertainment, or I can buy 3 comic books, which might afford me about 45 minutes, depending on the book, between the 3 books, that says something. You know what I mean? Comic books are really having to compete out there for our attention and for our entertainment dollars. And there's a lot of that to spend out there. But now the competition is way too high. And I do very much believe that comics need to step that up. All right, so before you go, I really want to ask you guys to check out the link in the description below to the second issue of Area 51, the Helix Project, the Kickstarter campaign. Will be launching as of February 17th. So what you can see between now and then is a pre-launch page that you can follow, and it will update you when the campaign goes live. It's a deeply personal sci-fi noir tale exploring very relatable themes like loss, the idea of living in service of a memory to somebody, and identity, amongst many other things. It is a really cool twist on the super soldier trope, using my background in genetic biology, which is super fun that I actually get to make some use of that. So if you don't trust me, there have been countless reviews on YouTube. You can go look them up surrounding the first issue. And that first issue is also available at DarkKnightNation.com/shop down in the description below. But there will also be an opportunity in the second Kickstarter campaign for you to get copies of the first issue along with the second one. They're going to be printed on super high quality premium stock, and all of them will be signed without any excess charge. So I hope you'll consider giving that a look. If you trust my opinions on comic books, if you think I'm well spoken in any way whatsoever, please consider giving it a look. I poured everything I have into this story, so if you like me, if you like what I have to say about comics, I really think you'll enjoy it. So with that out of the way, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to thank you in advance if you do end up going to check that out, and we'll catch you on the next video from Dark Knight Nation.